Home is a place where we feel safe and relaxed. The comfort of being at home is important to happiness. That's why it's natural for people to want to remain at home, even when they become sick or disabled. But in order to stay at home, they often need help. Companion homemakers play an important role in helping people remain at home by providing non-medical care such as companionship, meal preparation, and light housekeeping. As our aging population increases, the need for companion homemaker services is growing rapidly. In this program, we will review the roles and responsibilities of being a companion homemaker and present guidelines for doing a variety of companion tasks. Each state has different policies regarding non-medical services, so always follow your agency's policies and procedures because they will follow your state's requirements. Human beings are social by nature. Friendly contact and social stimulation are important to us. Isolation can affect emotional and physical health. Your presence can make a positive difference in your client's life. You can provide the kind of warm human contact necessary for well-being, whether you're chatting in the kitchen, playing cards, or listening to music. Home is a very private place. Having a stranger in the home may cause discomfort for some clients. Remember that you are a guest in your client's home. When you are courteous, flexible, and supportive, it can help your client feel more at ease. The ability to make others feel at ease is sometimes called having rapport or having people skills. These skills are essential for doing companion work well. They include positive communication, creative problem solving, managing your emotions, positive body language, and relating to others with respect and sensitivity. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Older adults and people with disabilities have qualities and life experience worthy of our attention. Relate to each client as a unique individual rather than thinking of him or her simply as a senior or disabled person. Communication is a process of creating understanding. This shared understanding allows us to connect with one another.
If I really want you to connect with me as a friend, as a colleague, as someone who I'm there to help, I want you to understand that and get that feeling, understand from the way I interact with you, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, and so that there's no misunderstanding one way or the other. I think it's extremely important because we need to feel that what we're trying to convey really gets across.
Communication includes speaking, listening, and nonverbal cues. We communicate our emotions and attitudes nonverbally through body language, facial expressions, and gestures. 90% of all communication is nonverbal.
So what we really have to understand is simply, well, what are those verbal and nonverbal messages we're sending and how do they come across? Now, one example would be, especially nonverbally, sometimes you hear that it's not a good idea to fold your arms or to cross your legs, but it depends on when that situation and when those actions are put forth in that interaction you have with certain individuals. For instance, if I'm sitting here and I'm talking, or more importantly, am I listening to you, if I started out that conversation with my legs crossed or my arms folded, and I'm just really understanding what it is that you're saying and trying to convey to me, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, you can see where you can send a wrong message if, when you're talking to me, in the middle of that conversation, I do something like that, that clearly sends a message to the person that you're interacting with that I'm no longer really interested in what you have to say, or I disagree with what you have to say. We have to be very careful in when we use nonverbal cues, as well as what nonverbal cues we use. You want people to understand that they're important, that the things they say, the ways they interact are important to you.
Active listening means listening with an open attitude and paying full attention to what the other person is saying. Affirm what the person is saying by nodding in agreement. By really listening, you show respect and interest, which helps you connect in a positive way. Open-ended questions help to stimulate conversation more than questions that can be answered by yes or no.
So Bert, have you ever been to New York?
Yes.
Doesn't your daughter live in New York?
Yes.
So tell me more about your trip to New York.
Well, it was a long time ago. I think in the 50s.
You draw the person out and help him or her to share more fully.
And,
Other examples of open-ended questions are, you say you love country music. What are your favorite songs? Can you tell me how your mother made that dish? Other communication techniques include clarification. If you aren't sure you understand what was said, ask for clarification.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Can you repeat that?
Another technique to make sure that you understand is repeating what the person just said.
Thea, I think I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow.
So, did you say that you're not sure if you had a doctor's appointment tomorrow? Is that right?
Be patient with your client's communication process. Side effects from medication, pain, hearing or speech impairments, and some medical conditions can make it difficult for people to communicate effectively. If your client has a hearing aid, check to see whether it is in place. Face him directly and get his attention before you start speaking. Do not chew gum, eat or drink while speaking. Keep your hands away from your face while talking. Speak in a normal fashion without shouting. Reduce or eliminate background noise as much as possible when carrying on conversations.
More often than not, the elderly do have a slower pace. They have a slower speech pattern. They have a slower way of getting words out because they're taking so much time, making sure sometimes that you're understanding what they have to say. And in that case, you don't want to try to push them too fast. You don't want to get to the point of saying, okay, what else do you have to say so that I can move on? Or we really need to get this done, so what else do you have to say? No, you want to try to follow their way and their speed, because what ends up happening, the positive thing that ends up happening, is that you get so much more out of them when you allow them to work at their own speed rather than try to push them to whatever speed you're at. So there are those times when you're going to find yourself in uncomfortable conversations, when the person you're interacting with will bring up things that you don't feel very comfortable talking about. And you really have to understand how to take the conversation away from that point. And it's okay. It's okay to say to a person, you know, I just don't feel very comfortable talking about that. I don't mean to offend you, but if we would, let's change the conversation. And I think that's a very positive thing, because what it does is give that person the opportunity to understand that I hear what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, but I don't feel comfortable interacting in this way. So let's move away from that. Well, at some point, you'll probably find yourself in a situation where someone is going to share with you something very emotional to them, whether it's death or thoughts of death or a long illness that they're having or such things like that. And they really are looking for someone to just listen to them. Because so many times we don't have just that person we can have as a sounding board, someone that will listen to us and help us work out things or work through things on our own. Remember, you're not there to solve their problems. You're going in to make a difference in someone's life. You're going in to do something that's going to bring about peace and joy to them. And you communicate that simply by the way you present yourself, the way you present, the way you listen, the way you use nonverbal skills in the sense of not closing yourself off to them. You are going to be someone that will change that person's life for that day or maybe even for the rest of their lives.
Companion homemakers often develop a caring bond with their clients and express affection through hugging or holding the client's hand. Touch can be a nurturing part of social interaction and can help to alleviate isolation and loneliness. However, some people prefer not to be touched. Ask permission to hug or touch, especially when you are doing it for the first time.
One of the most important things in working with older people is not bringing ageist attitudes to our work and relationships with them. Ageist attitudes are really stereotypes in our society about older people that really are not true for everybody. And it's so important that when we're working with one individual that we are focused on that person and not have stereotypes color our work with that individual. Many stereotypes exist. Perhaps number one is that all older people are senile. Thinking that people, when they're older, all experience some decline in mental capacity. Other stereotypes are that older adults are useless and really do not contribute to their family and community. Yet we know many older adults are very involved in their communities. In fact, talking about families, we have many older adults that are actual parents to their grandchildren. A common stereotype is that older people are sexless, that they aren't interested in intimacy or sexual involvement, and yet we know that as people age, the need, the feelings in terms of intimacy and sexuality do not die. As one older gentleman told me, he says the fires are still burning, and he was 93. Another common stereotype is that people as they age tend to get irritable, grouchy, and are not fun to be around. There are some older adults who are maybe more difficult to be around and are irritable, but there's usually some underlying factors. Perhaps they're in a lot of pain, they're dealing with multiple health issues, or sometimes they may be just depressed. But aging itself does not result in greater irritability and grouchiness. A common stereotype about older people is that everybody who's older has hearing loss. How that affects communication, if we believe that, with every older person we have contact with, we may tend to talk louder at them, raise the pitch of our voice, which makes it even more difficult for that person to hear, or we think they will hear better if we slow down and exaggerate. What can happen when we begin communicating with an older adult, especially one who is frail, on the basis of stereotypes, is that we start communicating with them in what we consider childlike ways. Sometimes when individuals will use terms that they think are terms of endearment, such as sweetie, honey, dearie, and yet they really don't recognize the individuality of the person. It's much more respectful to use the individual's title and name. Mr. Smith, Mrs. Alvarez, Mrs. Robinson, unless the person then gives permission to call them by their first name or a nickname that they might prefer. Sometimes too we may be using child terms and asking an individual to do something, and to say, for example, do you need to go to the potty, is really not respectful of this individual as an adult. So basically, we want to speak to that older person no matter how frail that individual is, no matter how old that person is, just as we would talk with another adult.
Ethics and integrity refer to doing what is right or correct, even when it is difficult. Ethical behavior means being honest and respectful. Causing any harm to your client, such as taking his or her money, speaking harshly, or having sexual contact, is not ethical behavior and may lead to criminal charges. Integrity and ethical behavior are very important in companion homemaker care. Some examples of integrity are not speaking to others about your client's personal information, reliability, doing what you say you will do, telling the truth, protecting your client's property, and admitting mistakes. As a companion homemaker, you have access to private information about your client. All client information, such as financial, medical, or personal information, should be kept confidential or private. In other words, do not speak about your client to friends, family, or other clients. The only time that it is appropriate to share client information is with the client's healthcare professionals, your agency supervisor, or the family member who serves as the primary caregiver. Being dependable is also important. Your client relies upon you to arrive on time and do the assigned tasks well. In order to do a good job as a companion, you must be alert and emotionally balanced. The use of alcohol or drugs before or during work could put your client or yourself in danger and can result in you losing your job. Keep an accurate record of the hours you work and follow your agency's policy on reporting your hours. In your companion work, you will come into contact with people from many cultures and ethnic groups. It's important to recognize cultural differences and to respect them. Each culture and ethnic group has its own unique style of dressing, diet, and beliefs about health, family, and religion. Social customs differ too. In some cultures, for example, shoes are taken off before entering the home. Entering the home with shoes on would be considered very rude. That is only one example of how customs differ in various cultures. When you enter the home of someone from another culture, speak in a polite manner. Ask your client or a family member about what is culturally appropriate to them. That is the best way to learn. Do not touch objects in the home without permission. The way you present yourself through your clothing and posture gives others information and impressions about you. It is another form of communication. Be sure to maintain good hygiene in order to eliminate body odor or bad breath. Fingernails should be kept short. Dressing professionally in neat, clean, modest clothing shows that you respect yourself, your clients, and the work you do. Clothing should be comfortable and easy to move in. Low-cut tank tops, tight pants, shorts, or other revealing clothing is not appropriate to wear to work. Keep your makeup and jewelry simple. Avoid perfumes, scented lotions, or aftershaves when at work. Many people are allergic or sensitive to fragrances. Some companion homemakers wear a smock or apron to protect street clothes during cleaning or meal preparation. Flat shoes with non-skid soles are best for safety and comfort. Tobacco use should be limited to breaks. Never smoke in the client's home. When you begin to work with the client, your agency will do an assessment of the client's needs. Then a care plan or service plan will be completed. The care plan is a guide that you will follow on a daily basis. It describes the services you are expected to provide, such as meals, shopping, activities, and household tasks. After every shift, you may be required to fill out a report that describes what you did that day, such as what foods you prepared, what household tasks you performed, or what activities occurred. There should be space to record any general observations or comments. When you meet a client for the first time, introduce yourself by name.
Hello, Mr. Angers. It's nice to meet you. My name is Thalia Keppel. And how would you like to be addressed as?
Find out how your client prefers to be addressed. Always respect your client by using the name he or she prefers to be called. When you are at work, your attention should be on your client and his or her needs for companionship and household help. It is not appropriate to discuss your personal life or problems. Instead, draw your client out about his interests. Focus on what is positive in your client's life experience. Personal phone calls and other personal business should occur only when you are on breaks or finished with your workday. Do not use your client's phone for personal calls. If your agency offers transportation services for their clients, you must follow their policies. If you transport your client in your car, you must have a valid driver's license, a clean driving record, and an operational car with properly installed seat belts. If you are permitted to use the client's vehicle, your use should be covered on his or her insurance policy. Make sure that you and your client are always wearing seat belts. Do not leave your client in the car unattended if your client is confused or temperatures are extreme. Your job may include going with your client to medical appointments or other events. Remember to be professional at all times. Find out what your client expects of you during the outing. When you understand exactly what is required, it eliminates guesswork.
Do you want me to drop you off in front of the building, or do you want us to walk up together?
Walk up together.
Okay.
Okay.
You may be expected to answer the client's telephone. Answer it by the second or third ring if possible. Be polite and give the caller your full attention.
Hello, Jones Residence. This is Lori speaking.
This is Cheryl.
Hi. No, Doris is sleeping right now. This is Cheryl, her daughter. Can I take a message?
Yes, I'd like to come over about 4 o'clock.
Okay. You'll be by around 4 o'clock today?
When taking a phone message, write the information
I will let her know
accurately
when she
and repeat it
wakes
back to be sure it is
Bye,
correct.
Cheryl.
When a visitor comes to spend time with your client, provide privacy for their visit by working in another room, but remain accessible if your client calls for you. Clients who are isolated and lonely sometimes grow very close to their companion. They may view the companion as a best friend or part of the family. This can become a problem if the client makes requests that go beyond your role. For instance, the client may ask you to give advice about family disputes, wills, health, or other personal matters. If your client tries to put you in the role of an advisor or asks you to do things that are not part of your duties, then firmly but politely say no. Report these requests to your supervisor. He or she may be able to assist your client in obtaining those services elsewhere. As a companion, it's important to develop good observation skills. Be aware of any physical or emotional changes that occur in your client. Does he appear agitated or depressed? Is he or she eating less? Report your observations to your supervisor and follow his or her guidelines. It's always better to report an observation, even if you're unsure of its importance, rather than risk your client's well-being by not reporting it. Record your observation in your daily report. It is important to be prepared in case your client has a medical emergency. Make sure that emergency information is posted by the telephone. The list should include the proper emergency number in your area. In most areas, that number is 911. The physician's name and phone number, pharmacy number, the number of a relative or neighbor, the house address, and the name and number of your agency supervisor. Always follow your agency's policy for handling emergencies. One emergency that requires immediate attention is a heart attack. Be aware of the signs and symptoms of a heart attack. They include chest pain, pain that radiates within the shoulder, neck, or arms, dizziness, sweating, nausea, and difficulty breathing. Remember that a woman's symptoms are less predictable, and she may not experience chest pain. However, she will often have shortness of breath, nausea, and vomiting. If you suspect that your client is having a heart attack, call for emergency medical assistance immediately. Become familiar with the signs and symptoms of a stroke that include weakness or paralysis on one side of the body, facial drooping, and slurred or incoherent speech. If you suspect that your client has had a stroke, call for emergency assistance immediately. Falls are the leading cause of death from injury for people 65 years or older. The most common injury from falls is a hip fracture. Falling may be a sign of a serious medical condition. Follow your agency's procedure for handling falls. Important information to report and record about falls includes the day, time, and location of the fall, how the fall occurred, any history of previous falls. If your client is unconscious after a fall, call 911 or your local emergency number. Do not move the person, because he could have a neck or spinal cord injury, and moving him could make it worse. Cover him with a blanket to prevent chilling. Notify your supervisor. Stay with your client until help is available. It is important to know whether your client has a DNR order. DNR stands for Do Not Resuscitate. It is a doctor's order that resuscitation should not be attempted if the person's heart or breathing stops. A DNR order means that the person does not wish to be brought back to life if his or her breathing or heart stops. Even with a DNR, you should still call emergency services if your client stops breathing. They will determine the proper medical procedure. If your client has a DNR order, it should be visible and easy for you, other care providers, and emergency personnel to locate. Older people are more vulnerable to fires and natural disasters because of reduced mobility, hearing, or other impairments. It is estimated that 75% of older people who die in home fires did not have working smoke alarms. Working smoke alarms provide early warning of fire and are especially important for older people. A safety checklist of the client's home should include monthly testing of the smoke alarms. In an emergency, follow your agency's plan for moving your client to safety or for another staff member to replace you. If you cannot contact the agency because of power outage or problems, listen to a battery-operated radio for emergency information. Stay with your client until help arrives or until your client has been moved to a shelter where he or she is physically stable and secure. Leaving your client in an unsafe situation during an emergency is considered abandonment or desertion. Don't leave a confused client alone at an emergency shelter. He or she will continue to need one-on-one care. By the time a person needs homemaker companion services, he or she will have experienced many difficult losses. They may be grieving for their loved ones who have passed away, or for the decline of their physical strength and capabilities. Older people long for a meaningful connection with others when their world shrinks to only the rooms they live in. As a companion homemaker, you help your clients remain in the comfort of their own homes. On a deeper level, your presence expands their world. The warmth and human connection you bring has a positive effect on their well-being and quality of life.